Hello, and welcome to today's program. I am Diane Okonski, and I'm here as your host for today. We are honored to have with us two members of Iceland's Foreign Service, Bergdís Ellertsdóttir, Iceland's ambassador to the U.S., and Ingibjörg Maya Stefánsdóttir, Iceland's honorary consul for Colorado, who will be facilitating the conversation. I want to thank the INLUS members and donors for their contributions that make our webinars, classes, scholarships, and grants possible. If you are not yet a member of the INLUS, please consider joining us. Information is found at inlus.org. As with many of our webinars, today's program is being recorded and will be available on the INLUS website very soon. Today, if you go out to our website, you will find our webinar page, and that has a listing of all the links to our prior webinars. But today, we encourage you to submit your questions using Zoom's Q&A feature, and we will answer as many as possible later in the program. All right, so let's get started. Today, we have with us as I said, Bergdís Ellertsdóttir and Inga Maya Stefánsdóttir. Bergdís Ellertsdóttir was appointed ambassador for Iceland to the United States in September 2019, just as the COVID pandemic took hold. Prior to that time, she served as the permanent representative of Iceland to the United Nations from 2018 to 2019. She also served in many positions on behalf of Iceland, including working with the European Union and NATO. She is now sadly completing her post in Washington, D.C., and will return to Iceland this summer. Today's facilitator, Inga Maya Stefánsdóttir, has served as Iceland's honorary consul since 2016, with responsibility for Colorado, and she also services Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico. She was born and raised in Húsavík, Iceland, and originally came to the U.S. as a foreign exchange student. After going home, she met her American husband and followed him to Colorado, and she has been a longtime resident of Morrison, Colorado, a town of a population of 140, where she has started her own insurance agency. So welcome, Ambassador Ellertsdóttir and Maya. Thank you for making time today to talk with us. And Maya, I will turn it over to you to start the conversation.
Thank you. Góðan daginn, Bergdís. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us today. I know that you are now in Reykjavik. You just arrived this morning. And on the behalf of the Icelandic National League in the United States, I'm really honored to have the opportunity to ask you a few questions. So let's start. With so much going on in the world these days, what is the embassy focusing on right now, and what are the priorities? Sorry.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you for having me on again. It's always a pleasure, and I love this way since the United States is so huge. So I don't have opportunity to go to all states or to meet all the wonderful people out there. So this is an opportunity for me to reach out there. So I thank you for that opportunity. So there is always a lot going on. And I mean, the main priorities of any embassy is always, of course, to take care of the interests of your country and to try to, in many different ways, enhance the relationship between the United States and Iceland, in my case. But of course, there are events, that you do not have any control over, which then dictate the agenda. And of course, the brutal invasion of Russia into Ukraine made our focus and priority defense and security issues much more than they had been before. So that has taken up a lot of our time, and we have had just recently our foreign minister Þórdís Kolbrún in DC, in which he, for example, took part in meetings that discussed the situation in Ukraine, and I met with some congressmen and women and urge them to take care of the aid package that was lingering for a long time in the House. So now that is all taken care of, and we're very grateful to our American friends for that. But as I say, it's in a nutshell, it's taking care of Icelandic interests in the United States.
Well, there's also change going on in the Icelandic government. We have presidential elections coming up soon. And does that, or how does that impact current relationship with the United States?
Actually, when it comes to foreign policy, it doesn't really change dramatically from one government to the other. And the cornerstone of our security and defense is our bilateral defense agreement with the United States. And whoever is running the country, nothing changes that fact. And nothing would ever have any implications on the focus that we have on our relationship with the United States, our most important trading partner. And as I said, our most important partner when it comes to security and defense. So I have been in this for a long time, even if I'm not served in the United States for so long. So I think I can say that there are nuances from one government to the other, but the basic foreign policy remains the same.
Right. So the vision of the future between these two countries is not going to change much?
No. I mean, of course, as I said, sometimes there are events that we have no control over, and there might be some changes in the government in the United States that could have implications. But I don't think in the long run that there will be any change, and that our relationship will remain strong and vital and of importance to both countries.
Yes. So this is kind of not related to politics, but is there anything that we Icelanders can teach Americans? Possibly something about happiness, maybe? Iceland is always on top of the list, along with Finland and let's see, Denmark maybe, about being the happiest people in the world. I don't know. What can we teach Americans?
I actually took part in a panel not so long ago when the latest figures on happiness in the world were presented by Gallup, and our friends the Finns are the happiest, and Denmark is number 2 and we're number 3. But I was asked why this was, and I think as I said earlier, I mean, the United States is so big. And you have families who maybe, the grandmother is in Seattle, some of her grandkids are in DC, others in Texas. So, I mean, but here in Iceland, the families are so closely knitted, and you always have someone to phone if you can't go and pick up your kid at the kindergarten, or, you are locked out and you know, who has the spare key and stuff. So. Yeah. So I think that has a lot to do with happiness. But what can we teach the Americans? We often talk about gender equality, how we have achieved that. We also talk about the blue economy and all the possibilities there by making full use of the card, using 100% or 80% like we do, which is like 50% usage in the US. Generally speaking. And of course, we have the geothermal energy and all sorts of innovations related to energy, but also for example, in the health tech sector. We often talk about the caresses in that instance. So yes, but the Americans can also teach us a lot of things, and it's very difficult to compare. And I always say, change. It's easier to implement change in smaller societies than huge ones. So, and the US is not one country. I mean, there are differences between states, between cities, between urban, and, so I think there are more similarities in some places than others. So, and I think we can all teach each other some good lessons.
That is true. So for you, what has been the most important job or part of your job as the ambassador? Maybe
This
what
is
was
a
the
difficult.
hardest, biggest change for you, or what was the, most unusual thing about your job in the last 5 years?
Well, I mean, I had been in New York before I came to Washington, D.C., but I think just the realization, I had never lived in the United States before, even if I'd often been there and I had participated in meetings on bilateral issues, defense-related issues, trade-related issues. But it's a different story, as you know, when you start living in a country. It's something. And I must say that what has impressed me most is the people I met and how generous people are with their time and how interested they are in Iceland and eager to hear about this small island in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean, and just generally just kind and easy to get to know. That has been what I really, appreciated the most, I think.
So during your tenure, during the last 5 years, what has been your greatest accomplishment?
I always envy people who have like a good answer to this, but I think I'm not working alone. I have a team in the embassy of great people. I've always been really lucky with my co-workers, and some of them, great people. So what we have been working on is we have mostly been trying to establish contacts, and we've really focused on contacts, for example, in Congress, where we now have a lot of good friends. And this is important to further Icelandic interests, like with visa issues. We recently, was an Icelandic caucus established in the House. So establishing contacts, I think, is one of our greatest accomplishments. But I also want to mention one particular project that we worked on for a long time and was a lot of effort, in which we cooperated with Business Iceland and Green by Iceland. And we used a lot of time and effort to create links in the US on energy issues. So about 2 years ago, we hosted a big conference in Washington, D.C. called Our Climate Future, with great participation both from Iceland and from the United States, in which our then Prime Minister spoke and our Foreign Minister. So I think that is one of the things I would look back on and see this was really great.
Yeah, I would. Our Governor Polis, is very interested in energy, geothermal energy, and I know that he is going to Iceland in June. And also there will be, I think, on June 20th,
Exactly.
an energy summit here in Denver, half-a-day summit. And so that's
Yes.
kind of exciting to see the connection between Colorado and Iceland directly. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. No, we are looking very much forward to that. So that would be, one of the things I will do before I leave, and we're really looking forward to it. And I know that our Minister for Energy is very excited to meet with the governor when he comes to Iceland.
Yeah, that'll be fun. It's cool for Colorado to be on the map. So this is kind of your, maybe personal question. What was your journey to the ambassadorship? How did all this come about? So you became the ambassador.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of years in the Foreign Service, but I mean, sometimes it's very, when I started in the foreign ministry, I mean, I did not sit at my desk and think one day I will be ambassador in the United States, you know, but of course that is one of, you know, everyone wants to be ambassador to United States. That's like, you know, you can't get any, you know, can't get any better than that in a way. But this is just, sometimes it's coincidences, sometimes like things click and you are the right person at the right time. But I mean, I've really always just enjoyed my work at the ministry. I've done defense issues, security issues, trade issues, cultural issues, and I think it's good if you to prepare for a bilateral embassy such as the one in Washington D.C., and which is so important. It's good to have a varied background, I would say. But I consider myself very lucky. I mean, it's as I said, it's sometimes just that things click at a certain point. And asked if asked in the Foreign Services, like, you know, told to be that I would become ambassador to the United States. I did not believe my own ears, you know. And my husband and I were talking about this the other day, and because I come from, you know, I come from humble backgrounds, you know, I would never have been able to have education in universities abroad if it had not been for the student loan system. And he was saying, imagine, you know, you as a small girl growing up in Breiðholt, you know what that is. It was like the first big suburb in Reykjavik. It was not so considered to be the nicest place to live at the time. That you are now ambassador to the United States. And it's an humbling, you know, experience and thought. And I'm really, really grateful. And I've really enjoyed my time in the United States.
Great. So basically my next question was, and you might have answered it, what standards do you have to become the ambassador? Or in your view, what are the most important qualities?
Just in general, I think it's always good to be curious and interested in other people, other cultures, in learning new things, because that is one of the best things about being an ambassador, being in the Foreign Service in general, is that you are always learning new things. You're always, you know, adapting to something new. You are learning a new portfolio, and that's really exciting. So you need to have that urge to learn, to be curious, and also respectful of other countries and people. And I think you also have to love your own country to be able to represent it abroad.
Yes, I would agree. How would you encourage women to seek foreign, State Department jobs or foreign ministries jobs?
Well, luckily, when I started, we were very few women, but nowadays, I think it's more or less half and half, or even, so we are, I think, on the right path. But I think, I mean, I would tell women, and this is kind of maybe stereotyping women a bit, but I think we sometimes are greater adapter than men are. We are often better listeners. We are sometimes read people better than men do. I actually think that women are better spies than men. Not that I have experience with that, but I think so. I think women have a lot of traits that are really good in order to be a good diplomat. But I think the most important thing about diplomacy is that we need all sorts of people. That diplomacy needs to represent the country, the people. So inclusiveness and people of all ages and you know, from all backgrounds and circumstances and education. So I think the more varied it is, the better team, a better representation of your country, this foreign services.
Yes. So you've been in Washington for almost 5 years now. What
Yeah.
is your favorite memory? What will you say that was the best thing that happened? What's my favorite memory?
Well, I mean, so many great things have happened. And I must say, as I said before, the people are, of course, your greatest memories. But there's one story I sometimes tell, because my first night, I came to Washington, D.C., I went to bed, and I woke up on a sunny morning, very early, and I hear music, and I'm like, what is this music? What is this? And I hear that it's the national anthem of the United States. And I'm like, oh my God, I open the window wider, and here it is. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like so welcoming. Maybe they're welcoming me too, I didn't think that. But it was so, I don't know, I got goosebumps. And then I didn't think much about it. And then the next morning, there it was again. And I'm like, what's going on? Then I discovered that actually the house where we lived was not so far from where the vice president of the United States is. And every morning they wake her up with the national anthem. So I was, this is something that really warmed my heart in my first days as the ambassador.
And you thought they were welcoming you.
Of course,
Oh, that's wonderful.
Going to every ambassador's house,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great story. So as you go back to Iceland, what will you miss the most about America?
I will miss the people. I have met, as I've said, I've just met so many great people from all walks of life. I mean, I have friends in Alaska, in Maine, in Texas, all over the United States, and a lot of good friends in DC, whom I will miss very much. And as I said, just people are so gracious, so generous with their time and interest, and that has made my work so much more interesting and easier. And it makes it even more easier that so many of these wonderful people have visited Iceland. So that's amazing. I mean, you hardly meet anyone these days unless they have just been or are going, or at least their family members have been. So so that also makes my life as an ambassador much easier, because people know what Iceland is, which they did not used to. As you know, Maya, probably when you came, people didn't know what Iceland was.
Yeah, I remember being asked, do you have houses? Do you drive cars? Do you have electricity? But that was like 50 years ago.
Exactly.
But yeah, I agree. People are the best.
Yeah, exactly.
And friendships you make. And so I'm kind of coming towards my last question for you. I hope we have a lot of listeners who will ask you questions. And my last question for you is, what's next in your future? What's Bergdís going to be doing?
I don't know, but what I do know, it will be very exciting and very interesting, because there's only interesting possible, I think, when you are in the foreign ministry. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking, even if I will miss the United States, I'm looking forward to coming home to Iceland. My kids are all here. My youngest boy just turned 18, and I think he needs some more love and care. So I'm very happy about that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, that is my last question for you, Diane. Maybe we have some audience that want to ask questions.
Yes, we do. If I unmute myself, it works better.
Okay.
So, Bergdís, when you come back as a tourist, what's the first thing you want to do that you couldn't do as an ambassador?
Oh, that's a good question. I always, when I meet people, the first thing I ask them is, if you only had one place to go to the United States, where would you go? And the answers, of course, are as many as the people I ask. But I would really like to go towards, you know, I have mostly just visited cities, but I would like to go to one of those, or maybe many of the beautiful parks, and I would like to see all this beautiful landscape, you know, that you see, like in Colorado and Utah, and you know, the Grand Canyon, and you know. But if you have a good, you know, spot that you want me to go to, I would be very grateful for the information, because you know, when I came to the United States, and you know where DC is, and I came from New York, and it's far between DC and New York, but on the map you can hardly see it, you know, and then you have all the rest of it, you know. Yeah. So if you have any good suggestions, please write to me.
You may be sorry you said that. There, you may be,
No.
you have a list longer than you can get to. So
I will be traveling a lot then.
yes, you will. Yes, you will. We have another question that how have you seen Iceland's foreign policy evolve over the time that you have served in the ministry?
It's a good question. I mean, it has evolved a lot. When I started, and I mean, it's a long time ago in one person's life, but it's not that long ago in a country's history. But if I just summing it up, I think we've grown up. To be honest, I think we have a much more professional and much more focused foreign policy than we had. I mean, the basics are the same. It's you know, it's you know, our membership of the Atlantic Alliance, NATO. It's the UN. It's the very important Nordic and Nordic-Baltic cooperation we have. The bilateral relationship with the United States and our defense agreement since the early 50s. So these are all still there, but we have taken on a much more active role in foreign policy than we had before. We served on the Human Rights Council. We have chaired, we just had a very successful summit of the leaders of the European Council. So we are taking on a much more, I would kind of independent and a much more thoughtful role in world affairs than we had the capability to do 20, 30 years ago. But I think we've always, what do you call it, a punch above our waist when it comes to foreign policy. I think we try to focus. We focus a lot on human rights. We focus on security in the north. We focus on the Arctic issues, so with a focused and I would say a progressive foreign policy. I think we've developed a lot in the last 20 years or so.
Thank you. So what have you missed about Iceland while you were living in the US?
Well, of course, I missed my kids and my family, and friends. But I think it's a very typical answer for all Icelanders. I think most of us would answer this question with the same answer, which is the swimming pools. Going, just soaking in hot water and chatting with friends or, acquaintances or whoever is in the hot tub with you at the time, and just, getting all your stress out and some few rays of sunshine, at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, depending on, when you wake up.
Just wonderful.
Mm.
All right, another question for you. What changes do you predict in Iceland pending the outcome of the June presidential election and changes in the prime minister and other roles of late?
Well, I mean, the presidential elections are, this is just a regular presidential elections. The president has a representative role. It matters to us, the people of Iceland, who is representing us, but it will not have any implications for the government or for the prime ministers or the policies of the government. So I don't predict any great changes. I mean, of course, each and every president has a kind of puts their own mark on the presidency, because it's not like, you know, you don't like get a booklet on, okay, this is the way this is what the president does. It's ability to form his or her presidency with the issues that they want to highlight, or you know, so many presidents highlight the language, the importance of the Icelandic language, culture, the environment, whatever. But it will not have any implications on policies or the government.
Thank you. Our next question is, how will your next post be selected? And do you get to request a region where you would like to serve?
I mean, you can always try to request something, but even if we are a much bigger foreign service now than we were 20 years ago, we still don't have that many posts. So, you know, the availability of posts is not always that much, you know. So it just depends on, as I said before, the timing of when. And mostly I like to be surprised, you know. I'm not a very good planner. If my colleagues are at the embassy are listening, they will be nodding their heads now. So I actually like the idea of not knowing what will happen next. So you know.
All right. As a new ambassador comes in, what kind of transition or handoff or education takes place?
Well, I mean, I am hopefully going to meet my successor this week whilst I'm here. And then, of course, we prepare handover documents and, you know, people meet all the different departments of the ministry, and probably talk to all sorts of people in the society, you know, go to the people in the, the private sector and the public sector. So there are different ways of preparing, and we are just all set on making sure that this will be a smooth transition, and the most important thing is that we are taking care of Icelandic interests in the United States, and I think each and every ambassador, will make their own sort of marking on what they would prefer to highlight or to put in focus. I mean, within the framework that we have, but we're all different, and that is also from all other countries. I mean, one of the things about being an ambassador is you make good friends, you know, among your colleagues, for example, in DC, and they leave and a new one comes. And it's always something new that comes with a new person, no matter where they're from. So that will just be very exciting, I think, to see. So
there's no real ambassador school that people go to. It's a very, very conscious handoff.
Yeah, I would say so. But of course, you know, we have some training, but in Iceland, generally speaking, and that is not only for being an ambassador or whatever, it's like training on the job. Like whilst you are running, you are being trained, you know. As we call it, you know, being thrown into the deep end of the pool. That's the Icelandic style, sort of.
Okay. So what will you be doing in the ministry when you're between postings?
As I said, I don't know. I will tell you when I know.
All right. All right. We have another question and a comment. Takk fyrir, Bergdís and Ingibjörg. This has been an interesting and heartwarming discussion, and thank you for being here. Regarding our Icelandic or our climate future, I'm so glad to hear there is collaboration on energy issues between Iceland and the US. I think many here would say that we could use your help and advice. Is there anything on the front burner with respect to what possibilities exist therein? One thing that comes to mind is that the US West Coast might be able to utilize geothermal energy possibilities more effectively.
Mhm. No, absolutely. I mean, this cooperation is now concrete. Secretary Granholm was in Iceland just a few weeks back. And during that visit, she and Minister Guðlaugur Þór, who is Minister for Energy, Climate and the Environment, they discussed concrete projects in which Iceland and the United States are going to cooperate, not only in the US or in Iceland, but also in other countries, as in to help countries realize the potential of geothermal. But then talking about the West Coast, we fairly recently had a big delegation from California, from both the Senate in California, from the governor's office, and from the private sector, who came to see cooperation there. There's an MOU between California and Iceland on geothermal energy. So we are expecting a group from Utah this summer, also looking into possibilities of cooperation in the geothermal sector. So there's a lot going on, a lot of positive and concrete projects on the way. There has also been a lot of interest in the carbon management sector with CarbFix, for example, being, and you know about that they have been funded by the Ministry of Energy in the United States to see how their methodology can be used in different states in the United States. So there's a lot of things going on, very positive cooperation that's being developed very quickly these days.
Okay. Well, we also have a question from Mexico. Thank you, Rafael. Mexico has opportunities in the fishing, aquaculture, and energy for Iceland. Is there a policy for pursuing this?
I know of Rafael's interest in these sectors, and of course there is always an interest in pursuing cooperation with different countries. But our system is not big, so the focus now has been on the US, but I'm sure that there will be sectors in Iceland, industries and companies that would like to look further into opportunities in Mexico. And absolutely, Mexico has so much to offer, and I think this is something that we would, want to pursue in the future, and that might be something, for my successor to look into.
All right, we have one more question. In your opinion, will the Icelandic caucus in the US Congress continue after your departure?
Of course.
Oh, okay.
So even if, we of course cannot tell any parliaments anywhere what to do. So it was just with great pleasure that we, were there when good friends that we had made in Congress decided to establish this caucus. And then it's for all of us to make sure it lives on and and that more and more people become interested in participating in the caucus. When our foreign minister was in DC just some few weeks back, she met with the caucus and a lot of interested congressmen from both parties. So that it's a very good, you know, kind of first, you know, you always have some friends of Iceland there in Congress that you can turn to, and they can then help you maneuver your way in this big organization, institution that the US Congress is. So it will live happily, I hope, forever after.
Well, we hope so too. Thank you. We have no more questions at the present time. So I will just thank you so much, Ambassador and Maya, for again making time to talk with us today. This has been just so interesting. It's always so interesting to talk with you, Bergdís. It's just you're so open and honest with us. And you've been so generous with your time in meeting with the INL US over the past few years. And on behalf of the INL US, I want to thank you for your service here and just wish you all the best. But before we go,
thank you so much.
Before we go, I want to announce that our next program will be held on Thursday, June 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We will have with us Sean Wilsey, a geologist and professor at the College of Southern Idaho, who will talk with us about the volcanic activity in Iceland. He is hopefully coming back from Iceland just a couple of days before the webinar. So we will have very current information for you to hear about all the inflation and the eruptions and the fissures and everything else that's going on in the Reykjanes Peninsula and elsewhere. So thank you again to Bergdís and Maya. It's been just a pleasure. And to today's attendees, I thank you as well. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.